Good morning, everyone. On behalf of UCD Smurfit Executive Development, you're very welcome here this morning to learn about our Diploma in Corporate Governance Scholarship in partnership with the 30% Club. I'm going to hand you over to your host today, Professor Niamh Brennan, who's going to introduce you to our scholars. Thank you very much for joining us, and please do include your questions in the chat below, and we'll try and get to as many as possible. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Maria, for that introduction. And I welcome everybody to the webinar. I hope you'll find it interesting, entertaining and informative. So I'm just going to start by introducing the panel. First of all, as Maria said, Professor Niamh Brennan, I'm the Programme Director of the UCD Diploma in Corporate Governance, which I started in 2004. And on this webinar, we have three recipients of the 30% Club Scholarship. So they're going to tell you a little bit about their story. And we then also have somebody representing the 30% Club. So I'll introduce our three scholarship recipients. Stephanie Manahan, who got the first ever 30% Club Scholarship. Cora Sutton and Marie Gleeson, who's our most recent scholar beneficiary. And then Marie-Louise Gallagher is representing the 30% Club. So what I thought we'd start is I would go around our scholars and ask them to tell you their story, because each of them has an absolutely fascinating story to tell. And I think when they tell their story, you'll understand why they were the recipients in their particular year. So Stephanie, I'll hand over to you to tell your story.
Thank you so much, Niamh, and good morning, everybody, and good morning to my fellow panelists as well. I was absolutely honoured and delighted to be the first recipient of the 30% Club Scholarship to study the corporate governance programme with Niamh and her colleagues in Smurfits. And I have to say, at the time, many of you may remember, and that in 2013 and 2014, the CRC, which is a Central Media Clinic, which is an organisation that I am exceptionally proud to be the CEO of. But at the time, back in 2014, there was a massive and catastrophic, really, failure in governance at the helm of that organisation. And a failure that resonated not only through the disability sector, through the charity sector, but actually through the psyche of, I think, the Irish people. It really eroded confidence at the time in charities, in charitable donation, and it remained in the headlines for a number of months, if not the majority of a year, culminating in some challenging sessions at the Public Accounts Committee and other committees, as you can appreciate. So there I was, a new green CEO going in fresh. The entire board at the time were stood down because of the scandal, and the former CEO had left the pitch as well. So I was going into an organisation with no corporate memory, with no framework or governance established in any shape or form. And I was faced with this fairly gargantuan challenge of supporting a new board to be established in an organisation that was somewhat, well, it was very much in the eye of a storm. So at the time, I guess I knew that I would have to learn more about governance and particularly that regulatory space that governance touches on across all of the different parameters that I found myself in. So I set about doing some research, and I landed upon the programme in Smurfits, and I have to say it really resonated for me. And then I was delighted to see that there was an opportunity for this near penniless CEO to potentially apply for a scholarship. And as you can appreciate, as a new CEO going into an organisation where there had been governance failings, and there'd been, whilst there was no laws broken, there was sort of poor management of funds, to be sure. So I was loath to ask for any support from the charity that I was working for. So I was delighted to be awarded the fully funded scholarship. And I have to say, it did. I would genuinely say that this program changed my life. I think that it added incredible value to my role as CEO. It gave me phenomenal confidence in the task that I had before me. I think, Niamh, at times, I recall saying this at the program, but the program read like a textbook for the job that I had in front of me. And every single element I was able to put into practice and I was able to engage in. So I have to say the skills I learned were phenomenal as an executive leader in a very challenging time and a very challenging environment. And also it gave me huge confidence to step up and once I got things under control at CRC, to step up and step into the boardroom myself. And I have since sat on a number of boards and I feel I've got incredible skills and experience now combined to bring those skills with me. Happy to talk more about it, but in a nutshell, that's the story. And what I would say, Niamh, and I'll hand over then, is I have brought the CRC from that catastrophic place, and I would really, really say the difference that this course made was phenomenal. It made an absolute practical difference. And then last year, the CRC won an accolade of awards, including the Published Accounts Awards and including the Good Governance Awards. So for an organisation to come from that space to those amazing awards and recognition last year is a testament to the learning, I would genuinely say, that made a difference in that journey from this programme.
Stephanie, I often think in relation to corporate governance failure, out of bad comes good. And I think CRC is a very good case in point of that. One thing I'd like to pick up in terms of what you've just described, I think you called yourself a penniless CEO. But for those listening who are thinking about applying for the scholarship is awarded by reference to the individual in front of us. And whether the individual is backed by a wealthy financial institution or is a penniless CEO, that's not a basis on which we make the decision. We make the decision solely on the person and not on their wherewithal, which I think is fairer. So we did have one scholarship recipient who came from a very profitable financial services company, but she was, in our opinion, the best applicant that particular year. So it's a great story, Stephanie, and thanks for sharing it with us. And I'm now going to go to Cora, because Cora has a great story too, but it is such a different story. So Cora, over to you to tell us a little bit about your background.
Thank you, Niamh, and hi everybody. Thanks for joining us this morning. My name is Cora Sutton Smith and I'm the director of a civil and structural engineering company called CS Consulting, and we're 10 years old this year. We started in 2012 in the depths of the recession in the construction industry, and we've grown steadily from our handful of founders to a team of over 70 across 3 offices in Dublin, London and Limerick. Something that we're very proud to have achieved, that growth in a new area of development that has come from the construction recession at that time. Being a woman in the construction industry in a leadership position is rare. There's a well-established shortage of women in leadership and senior roles and board positions. I myself would like to pursue board roles and be a representative at that level for women coming up in the industry. In engineering, we talk about it all the time. Engineers Ireland are a great organisation for the promotion of women in engineering, but representation is key. Seeing what you can be and seeing people in those roles is hugely important for promoting more women to come into our industry. So I knew that this course would give me the tools and the confidence that I needed to go for those type of roles in the future. But I also knew that it would give me the tools to better my organisation, make improvements in our governance. As a private limited company, we wouldn't run by engineers, we wouldn't have great background in governance or organisation structure to the level that it would be in other organisations. So I knew that would greatly help me to better the organisation as we were, and seeing as how we were growing so steadily. And the breadth of what you will learn in this course is so huge. You will learn everything from codes of governance that listed companies have to adhere to, but is really good practice for all companies to take notice of, to the section of like annual reports if you're a board member. And I know that this course will give me the tools that I need to fulfill those roles in the future and really be a good representative for women in my industry. The scholarship, when I saw it available through the 30% Club, I thought it was a great opportunity. I really was interested in doing the course, but I knew financially it would be difficult to justify to my organisation to pay for it. I knew that I ticked a lot of the boxes, given the industry that I'm in and the role that I'm in, to be a good representative for the 30% Club and this scholarship. So I decided to go for it, something that I've had to do a lot in my career. Being a woman in this industry, you just have to go for it sometimes. And I knew that the worst possible outcome was rejection, which would be fine, and that I would look at alternative means to get it onto the course. I knew that I would definitely do it at some stage. So I would encourage anyone who's interested in going for the scholarship to do so. It's hugely benefited me. It's given me great confidence to fulfill my role as it is now and the roles that I want to fulfill in the future.
Thanks very much, Cora. And again, I just want to pick up one aspect of what you just shared with us. And you said that the worst thing that could happen if you applied for the 30% scholarship is that you would get rejection. But you were going to go for it anyway, notwithstanding. But that reminded me that I hosted an event in the Smurfit School a few years ago where I conducted an interview with the US ambassador, who is a massively successful businessman, a Trump appointee, and he titled his talk, "Rejection is Energy." And he told us about all of the rejections he'd experienced during his career, which led to great success in the end. But I just thought it was a brilliant strapline, "Rejection is energy." So that's a nice kind of theme, Cora, to have introduced, and I thank you, and well done in your story. So I'm going to go to our third scholarship recipient, and that's Marie Gleeson, who has another out of complete left field story to tell you. So Marie, over to you.
Yes, Niamh, yeah, thanks very much, and good morning everybody, and I'm delighted to be here and honoured to be one of the scholars speaking to you this morning. So I actually was in the Irish Navy for just nearly 21 years. So I had retired from the Irish Navy in 2019, and I had started my own small private consultancy business. But I suppose when I look over my naval career, like that, it linked very much to the 30% Club, and I recognise what Cora has mentioned there, because I would have been one of the first and would have worked in a very, a different environment, and started as a cadet, made my way through, very naive as a cadet really when I look back in 1998, and I come from a farm in Tipperary, so I had no maritime background whatsoever, and then worked my way through the organisation, served in various appointments, captain of one of the naval ships. I was command of the LE for 2 years. And I served overseas with the United Nations, and I had, a huge amount of experience. And when I left the military, I very much still had a desire to serve, because that's in you from when you join. So I had applied for a state board position, and the first one I applied for, I didn't get it, but the second one I applied for was on Bordis Skiwara. So I had been appointed to the state board in Bordis Skiwara, and I suppose when I look at it, I thought governance was very suited to my skill set in terms of leadership, decision making, crisis, risk management. But as I was on the board for a period of time, I was starting to get my feet under the table. I recognized very quickly that there were gaps in my own skill set, and I needed to look at addressing them. So I suppose I was looking at different courses and qualifications, and like Cora, I had looked and saw the course in Smurfit, and I spoke to a number of different individuals who'd been on it and highly recommended it. And I saw just the range of knowledge that you would come away from the course with, that I definitely would be able to plug some of those skills gaps. However, when I saw the scholarship, if I'm being really honest, and I don't know how you'll appreciate this, Niamh, but when I went for the scholarship, I actually didn't think I would get it. So I went for it on the basis of, if I got my name in and if I applied a couple of years, then I'd actually, you know, eventually someone would look at me. And I think predominantly that was because I didn't have a corporate background. I didn't have a financial background other than public sector finance, which is very different to the, you know, the annual reports and the audits and a lot of the information that I've gathered in the last year. So I suppose the biggest shock for me was actually in getting the scholarship. But I have to say, and I'd like to acknowledge Cora particularly today, because I reached out to a couple of the previous scholars, just messaged them on LinkedIn, you know, would you mind having a chat with me? And Cora went above and beyond in terms of the support that she gave me, you know, talked me through the process, really was so supportive. And I think that's a fantastic reflection on the scholarship and the scholars that are involved as well, and the selection process as well. So I'm on the course at the moment. So I don't know if I'm preempting it because I haven't done the final exams yet, but I'm fingers crossed hoping that I'll have the qualification come May or when we get the course done. But yeah, no, it's just a phenomenal experience. And as Cora and Stephanie have referred to, you know, the course, the structure, the breadth of information, the people that you meet on the course, I'd say we could be all here all morning just talking about that alone.
Thanks very much, Marie, for sharing a story. Again, you've triggered a couple of thoughts in my mind. The first is your reference to Cora and how supportive she was, and I'm sure the other people you contacted were supportive as well. And I have to say, in my career, I have found my female colleagues to be extremely supportive, and I won't go further with that comment, which I could develop out privately. But I think we women are very good to each other in helping each other get on. And I think the 30% Club is a tangible manifestation of that. And then the other thing Marie saying, very modestly, that you didn't think you'd get the scholarship, but you thought it was worth going for it anyway. And we were talking earlier that the mere exercise of going for the scholarship has a value of itself. You have to write an essay, and that essay will, you know, help you reflect on your career, yourself, where you're going, and all the rest. So the mere application, regardless of the outcome, is a benefit of itself. So thanks for sharing that. So Marie-Louise, I'm going to kind of go over to you and ask you to share with those on the call, you know, what the 30% Club is about and what it's trying to achieve.
Great, thank you so much, Niamh. I think I'm honoured and humbled to be around such phenomenal women today and who've participated in the programme within UCD. So as Niamh mentioned, I'm Marie-Louise Gallagher. I'm a director in PwC and I lead the 30% Club Scholarship Programme, but I also support the steering committee. In terms of the 30% Club, it was founded a number of years ago. Marie O'Connor was the first country lead. She was a partner in PwC, and that's really how I became involved with the 30% Club. But it was essentially founded to, I suppose, support women in terms of the furtherance of their careers, and you know, with the objective at the outset, I suppose, to making sure that we had 30% of women on boards. Now, arguably, the requirement of 30% of women on boards is that a bit old now? You know, do we want to strive for something further, more than 30%? But about 8 years ago, the programme of the scholarship programme started. And since that time, UCD has been one of our founding universities in providing that support. And I think as I heard the ladies this morning speak, you know, what resonated with me was the reference to support and the importance of support as you go through the executive education journey. And really, that is what's at the core of the 30% Club Scholarship Programme. It's designed to provide that support to students who want to go on that journey of executive education. I heard Cora mention, you know, that financially she wasn't sure if it was going to be, but she thought she'd try anyway. Maria wasn't sure, you know, whether she actually had the skill set at the outset. But I think, you know, when I think back of all the stories that I've heard this morning, there's one thing that springs to mind, and that's that you can't be what you cannot see, and how important it is that in the vein of that support network, that actually we promote individuals and women who achieve such incredible things. When I think about support, where do I think support comes from in the 30% Club? Well, it actually comes from, I suppose, at its core, the universities themselves who provide the scholarship programme. But it also comes from other aspects. So it comes from the alumni, which we heard Marie refer to, and Stephanie, I know you've been a significant part of that as well. And that support network that's there from the alumni of leading ladies who've been through scholarships in the past. But it also comes from employers, and that support could be financial or it can be non-financial. And oftentimes we find that really the core of that support needs to be supporting ladies in terms of the time that they might need to attend college and attend the courses, but also just that support in terms of actually being there and fighting in your corner for you to succeed. So, I mean, I think it's just such an honour today to be surrounded by such talented women at their peak and promoting the 30% Club Scholarship Programme.
Thanks, Marie-Louise. I'm going to now move into more granular discussion of the programme itself and what it's like to be a participant on the programme. And before I hand it over to the panel to discuss this, I'll just kind of mention the kind of key logistics of it. So executive education is very different from undergraduate education and from postgraduate education. And the difference is that it entails peer-to-peer learning. So of course you learn from the lecturers, but a huge amount of the learning comes from the participants themselves. And from sharing their business experiences and all the rest. And we don't manage this, but naturally we get a brilliant variety of people with different backgrounds joining the programme. But because of peer-to-peer learning, because the students learn from each other, we will not offer a hybrid delivery. We will not offer a virtual delivery. It is face-to-face. Not this academic year, but last academic year, we were forced to deliver it online, but for the first 2 weeks. It wasn't bad, but it really wasn't the same as actually physically showing up in Smurfit. So the lectures are delivered 4:30 to 7:30 on a Monday and a Tuesday. There's a break, a long enough break in the middle of that 3-hour slot. And there's a substantial meal of a high quality in Smurfit. You'll put on a bit of weight if you take on the programme because of that. But that break is important because that's where the peer-to-peer learning takes place. Some of it takes place in the classroom, but it's the chats outside the classroom, I think, that are really important. And we also have 2 weekends away, one in each of the 2 semesters. And there's a little bit of corporate governance is done on those weekends away. But the main purpose of them is to enhance the kind of social chemistry in the group. So on the Friday night, we have a meal, maybe a few glasses of wine and all the rest, and we get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm going to hand over to my scholars and ask them, what was the programme like from your point of view?
I might kick off. I think I was one of the the early starters, and a point I will pick up just from my colleagues earlier, just to make sure that everybody here today hears it, is that no matter what age you are as well, I would be going for something like this and for further education and for that lifelong learning. I think sometimes I'm probably somewhat the elder lemon here with the candidates, but I would absolutely say that embarking on studying and furthering your education in as your career progresses is really, really key. And at 55, I find myself now heading in to take on a whole new CEO role. And again, I think the confidence that I have developed over the years of doing additional training such as this has really, really helped and supported me in those decisions. Going back to the peer-to-peer learning, and I would absolutely concur with Niamh, the location in Smurfit is fantastic. Practically, whether you drive yourself, whether you cycle, whether you get public transport, it's accessible. The lunch and the refreshments are, sorry, the food and refreshments are absolutely superb. But the time with the fellow participants is really, really special. It is so rich in the discussions, the conversations. There's also lots of opportunities to work together on a peer-to-peer, and certainly Niamh and our colleagues do challenge us to work with groups. And that isn't easy for everybody because there's a lot of give and take when you're working in a group with people that were strangers at the beginning. And just in case you get too comfortable, they change it up and they change the groups. And I don't know, Niamh, does that still cause the same consternation as it did the year that I was doing it? You get very cozy and comfy with your first group, and then Smurfits changes it up. But again, it's the reflection and the learning from working with different people, from completely different. Even today, when you hear that Marie came from the Navy, Cora is leading the way in engineering for women in STEM, and myself from the public sector and the charity sector. So there's an incredible richness in the group of people. And I think, Marie and Cora, the learning from mixing with that group has really, really stood with me. And you make connections that stay with you for life or for your career. I'm still in touch with some of the people that I would have met on the programme.
Absolutely. I can speak a little bit to what happened during COVID because I was that class, Niamh, and I do think that we did miss out a lot on the peer-to-peer discussions at break times, and that we were on Zoom a lot. And when we did get to have our weekend away, which was after the course had ended, we were all dying to see each other, get to know each other a bit better, whereas we would have had more of that time in COVID. So I do think the face-to-face is an essential part of the course and really does give you much more insight into people's own experience. Not to say that we didn't have great discussions over Zoom. We all made the best of it, like we all did with everything during COVID. But and we even had those fabulous meals delivered out to our house during the time. So we were spoiled rotten for the duration. It fed my family for the week. But you'll be well looked after in Smurfit for sure. I definitely think that that's a huge part of it. And as you said, Stephanie, those conversations and the things that you take from people, the relationships that will stand the test of time, the connections that you'll make to reach out, to ask questions of someone that you know has experience in a certain area in the future, it's invaluable, really. And anyone returning to education or worried about not having been in education for a while, you won't be the only one. There's such a mix of experience that there'll be people there who have, you know, recent experience of doing exams, recent experience of doing assignments, help each other out. I found it very useful in the groups for assignments to kind of discuss what your strengths are and maybe your weaknesses are as a team, so that you would be more efficient in doing your assignments as well from the outset. And that was really helpful to me and my group.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I'm actually just going to answer that question, but I was going to answer it anyway. I see a question come in on the chat there. So I suppose from my experience perspective, I'm from Tipperary. So I had to commute up and down to Smurfit for the course. And I was just actually jotting down on our cohort this year, we have Galway, we have Wexford, we have Kilkenny. And I know there are other members of the course as well who are commuting up and down. So I think logistically it's feasible. Actually, I have to acknowledge the support of the course administrator, Siobhan. So she has been amazing in terms of, for those of us traveling and also for the logistics of the course. So I suppose you have the support of the lecturers, you have the support of the facility, you have the support of a phenomenal coordinator, and then you have the support of your peer group. And I would echo exactly what Stephanie and Cora have mentioned, you know, that peer support and the breadth and depth of people in the room, because on our cohort this year, I know we're a large cohort, but we have, you know, we have diversity in age, we have diversity in gender, we have diversity in culture, we have diversity in job profile and experience, and diversity in terms of level of academic experience in the last decade or more for some people. So we've been able to balance that out in terms of people who have had more academic experience of late have been able to help those who maybe, you know, have been out longer. And then, you know, you get the benefit then of their life experience, especially. And I think for me, if I was to say, the experience for me has been so enriching because, you know, those skills gaps that I mentioned, the course has filled them in certain elements academically, but actually my peers have been such a massive contributor in terms of their experience from a financial, from a corporate, you know, just getting that breadth and depth. And people are very open and honest. And, you know, there's a very strong Chatham House rules sense in the room that people can speak and trust that the people in the room, you know, appreciate what they're divulging. So I think, you know, that's been my experience this year.
Thanks, Marie. Just again, Jane Wolfe has asked a question with regards to logistics. Is everybody based in Dublin or surrounding area? I'm based in the west of Ireland. And as Marie has said, we have had participants, you know, from the west of Ireland, several participants from the west of Ireland and other parts of Ireland. And just to give you a sense of how people manage that, first of all, this year in this year's class, there's somebody who I think stays overnights on a Monday, and I think that he overnights with his sister, so it's not costing him. And also people plan their working week. So they know, for example, they're going to be overnighting in Dublin on a Monday, and then they can organise business meetings in Dublin. And another facility that we offer is that if you want to use the Smurfit School as your office, we will give you a breakout room for the day that you can use as your base to operate from. So it's a bit of an additional challenge to travel to Dublin if you're not from Dublin, but I think people can work around that very well. And I just want to pick up a couple of things that you said. So Stephanie colourfully described herself as an elder lemon. And I'd just like to say, Stephanie, you're not as elder lemon as some others who've done these kind of Smurfit courses. And in this year's class, there's somebody who is of my own vintage, and I think I'm a good few years ahead of you, Stephanie. But in fact, I just say that last year I completed my own master's in the Smurfit School. And just to let people know that, you know, so I started by doing a diploma in business and executive coaching, because I wanted to kind of improve my kind of soft skill side. I'm a chartered accountant. I did science as my undergraduate degree. I've never had any exposure to the soft side of things. And then at the end of that course, we went to the pub and somebody piped up in the pub, oh, you know, if you do 3 diplomas, you get a master's. And I'm kind of saying, I don't really need a master's, but Smurfit's insidious marketing planted that seed in my head. And I went and I did 3 coaching diplomas and got a master's at the end of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, by the way. I mean, I'm on one side of the fence as a lecturer, but what a privilege and a joy to be a student. I loved being a student back in the classroom. And Stephanie also referred to working together. So just there's continuous assessment, and the continuous assessment is largely done in groups. Now, boards of directors, they're not a mystery. All they are is groups of people working together. So I think working in groups is a very, very important part of the program, because that's what boards of directors do. And Stephanie said that, you know, the groups change between the first semester and the second semester. So you've got comfortable with your semester 1 group, and then it's all shuffled up again, and that's a bit scary. Now, Stephanie was obviously lucky with our first semester group. It obviously was a good group, but occasionally there are problems in the group.
Oh, that's true.
You know, and I'm always amused by this, like, why doesn't Smurfit School do something about the problem in my group? I think, no, that's the group has to work these things out themselves. That we don't see that as our job, but it is an important challenge, is working with other people and learning how to work with other people in groups. So I think that working together is an important feature of the design of the program.
I recall, Niamh, a concept that you introduced us to. Don't know if it was actually the formal written theory, but it's such an important concept. And it was, I think the word you used was, there's always space for the contrarian at the board, the contrarian in the group. And I have reflected on that that wise phrase so many times since, the absolute importance to avoid groupthink, to learn that actually, even if there isn't a contrarian present, and that we're all in violent agreement with ourselves on something, that actually it behoves one of us to step out and say, what if, or let's just change this up, in order to make sure that groups of people can have that. So I think if it isn't there naturally, I think one of the learnings is we need to actually introduce it so that we have considered all of those different elements, whether it's in a group, in a project, in an executive or a non-executive situation.
Well, just to kind of put flesh on the bones of that little anecdote, Stephanie, I deliver the first course, and one of my objectives is to very quickly get this group of participants working together. So one of the exercises I run in that first course, I think it's on about lecture 3, or maybe it's lecture 4, is a board role play. And I divide the class between management, the non-executive directors, and then I appoint about 6 people in the class as contrarian non-executive directors. And their job is to be uber polite, but to be contrarian. And I remember, because the class finishes at 7:30 and we don't want to go over the time. So in that exercise, I remember a few years ago, an unfortunate chair who was desperately trying to get the board meeting to finish at 7:30. And at about 7:30 exactly, a contrarian said, and Chair, I'd just like to ask about, what about Brexit? And of course, everybody burst out laughing. It was too big a topic to introduce when the meeting was finishing, but that was a great contrarian, making life very difficult, particularly for the chair. But in real life, you don't have to tell somebody to be a contrarian. There are contrarians out there. And occasionally there's maybe the odd natural contrarian in the class, and these kind of people just have to be dealt with. Any other insights you'd like to share with people listening?
Maybe just about the exams, Niamh, if anyone's wondering about the open book exam and how that works. So you can bring all your notes with you to the exam, and you get given past exam papers, and I would say that they are the key to your success, practicing those and practicing looking up your notes, and then you learn how best to organise them and bring them into the exam with you. But you'll get a good steer from lecturers as well on the topics that the exam questions will cover. So you can do a certain amount of preparation as well, just have bullet points that you can help round out your answers when you're in the exam then as well. So I wouldn't say to be daunted by the prospect of doing exams, especially if you haven't done them in a while. You're given plenty of support during the course to practice them and know what's coming up, the general areas that are going to come up. So I'd say that's very useful.
I totally agree, Cora. And I think also the concept of an open book exam was new to me. What definitely, if I was to give any advice, is don't rely on, sashaying in with your open books. You have to put in the work ahead of time. And you are given, as Cora rightly said, so much support and time to be able to prepare for the exams. But you'll bring in books. Your highlighter will become your next best friend, and little tabs. But at the same time, I think that it is about preparing and trusting a phenomenal amount of knowledge, and really only using the books to maybe sense check something if you want to really quote it, or if you really want to get it right. It is about, I think, distilling all that you'll have learned, and confidently it will be in your head, and it will come out if you go in that calm, prepared way. So I think that would be my advice. And Marie, I realise you're heading into them.
Yeah, I think for me as well, I think Niamh makes a very good point, and I think she makes it very strategically, but she makes it very early in the course and people miss it, and speaks to the point, like, this course in executive education is not about achieving top class honours, and I think people realise that along the way. And again, because you're going into exam, and most of us haven't done a written exam, I know for myself, it's a good 20 years, I'd say, since I held an actual pen. And you realize really quickly when you get to know groups and get to know people that you're much better off to prepare with your peers rather than try and take a solo run, because it's a volume of work. And I would say to anyone, you know, forget about the grade that you're going to get at the end of this. It's not about that. It's about the experience. It's about the breadth and depth of content, because you will get a breadth and depth and it might overwhelm you a little bit at the start. But if you can keep in your head that that's your library, that's your reference material, that's what you'll have forever. And therefore, that's how I'm keeping myself on the straight and narrow at the moment as I face into the last set of exams. You know, it's not about the result, it's about what you learn and how you learn it.
If I could just share my philosophy in the design of the programme and having an exam. So my philosophy is that having an exam, well, I was the first in Ireland, I think, in the Republic of Ireland to offer governance training. Every Tom, Dick and Harry has now piled into that space. And my response to that competition is to make certain that the UCD Diploma in Corporate Governance is the high-end Rolls-Royce blue ribbon programme. And I think the exam is an important aspect of that. And apart from positioning the programme as the Rolls-Royce governance training programme, I also think that the exam really consolidates the learning. And, you know, as the course proceeds, it kind of comes together. It fits together, the machinery fits together. And I think that the exam is for me anyway, an important aspect, not a very pleasant aspect for the participants, but it is an important aspect in really consolidating the learning. It's not, the objective is not to catch you out. It's, you know, so we very rarely have anybody who has a problem with the exams. There's the occasional person who messes up. Nobody, by the way, ever knows that. And we just put on a resit organised with the individual. Nobody ever knows about it. So there's no loss of face or anything like that. And the person does it again and that's fine and all the rest. But I really do think that it is an important element in the programme for having a very deep learning of the material rather than a surface, let's just goose through it and all the rest. It's not about rote learning, so therefore it's open book, but as Stephanie said, the open book can be a bit of a misleading. You need to be familiar enough with the material and where it is, with your highlighter and your legal stickers and all the rest. Anything else about the programme that you'd like to share with those on the call?
I mean, I think ultimately that it is a fascinating programme. I came into it really knowing very little about governance, and I feel my knowledge, but more importantly, my interest. I now sort of put myself down as a bit of a governance geek. I love it. I love it. I love talking about governance. I love talking about risk appetite statements and what they can add value to. I suppose I feel very strongly that putting the right governance in place and having the tools to enable the right governance to be put in place. And it isn't a finite piece. It's ever changing and ever evolving and ever learning. But I have to say, of all the courses I've done, my undergraduate degree, my master's, this one has probably been the most impactful. And I don't say that lightly. It has really made a significant difference to improving what I do and how I contribute to my work and my own career development. And I have to be honest, recommend it higher.
Yeah, I hugely agree with you, Stephanie. I think it's given me the tools to be an effective board member in the future, and it greatly benefited me in my current role. Just even understanding fully roles and responsibilities of directors, fiduciary duties, and the implications of not fulfilling your role as a director. There's plenty of directors in the construction industry who don't have a clue what they're supposed to be doing or anything like that. So I've taken that to my organisation and been able to inform my fellow directors of all that stuff, which has been hugely valuable even just now. But I think even if you find some parts of the programme challenging, whether it be the analysis of financial information, things maybe that you don't deal with on a day-to-day. You have a toolkit forever there that you can refer back to, and it will really be invaluable to you into the future.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's the range of material, which reflects ultimately when you sit on a board, and there's always the bits, you know, you're more intrigued or interested in, and the ones you have to get through to some extent. And I think for me, it's, you know, you're going from the areas that I would have a natural, you know, affiliation with, leadership and strategy and discussions around that, but then you're moving into the more regulatory spaces. But then ultimately, it all comes down to the people in the room, and Niamh spoke to the group piece earlier on. And, you know, for me this year, it's been really intriguing because, you know, the experience that I bring into the room around that understanding of people and groups and teams and functionality, you know, that's come up in every course we've done, even company law. You know, it comes in everywhere because it's about the interpretation, the application, the discussions, the debates, the groupthink, the lack of groupthink. So I think that piece is just, and it's so intriguing. And as well, for me, you see that in the course and the peer group as well. And I think that's, you know, Niamh speaks there, but I think, you know, all the different potential roles that you'll see people fill on boards, you see them fill them in the classroom. And I think if you can step back and almost nose in, hands out, even observing your peer group, that teaches you a huge amount about executive level interaction as well.
In designing the program, another aspect of it that I think differentiates it from the competitors and keeps it at the high end is the academic and practical mix. But the academic material, I think, is very rich, and I think it just beautifully complements the practical experience that's in the classroom. And I've had several participants on the program who've been very, very experienced non-executive directors. And they sometimes say at the end of the program, you know, Niamh, I learned a lot more than I was expecting, because they would have thought, being a non-executive director, they knew a lot. And to me, that is the absolute ultimate compliment, that they learned more than they were expecting. And it is that practical academic mix that I think makes it so deep and such a good learning experience. And of course, if they didn't learn more than they expect, that would be an indictment on us. So I feel that we've kind of teased out the issues sufficiently for anybody listening on the call. And of course, they can always contact us if they want to find out any more of the detail. So I'm going to, Marie-Louise, put you on the spot and give you the last word representing the 30% Club to just wrap up the session. Thank you.
Yes. No problem. Thank you very much, Niamh. I suppose I'm sitting here coming from a PwC background, and, you know, while I think actually I probably understand governance an awful lot, I'm really jealous of everyone who's going to apply for the course, and maybe something in my future myself. Look, to round it up, in terms of the scholarship programme, it's hugely beneficial and hugely supportive to all and everyone who become part of the programme. We heard the ladies this morning talk about, you know, the confidence and not realising if they were going to succeed or not. I think we've all heard as well, try first, you never know what can come of it. And really that's probably what I'd like to leave you with. But also to say that, you know, we've heard about UCD and Smurfit and the phenomenal programme that's available, but there are other scholarships available as well across a number of universities and third level institutions. So we do this year have over 23 scholarship programs across over 19 institutions. So, you know, if anyone is interested in any of the other programs as well, they're available.
Great. Thanks, Marie-Louise. So I'm going to wrap up by thanking you, Marie-Louise, and the 30% Club for your support. It's a fantastic brand. I appreciate your comment that maybe 30% should become 40%, but you've established the brand so brilliantly that I kind of think you're probably stuck with the 30% Club label.
I think we probably are, yes.
Yeah. And so to thank also the three scholars, Stephanie, Cora and Marie. And last but not least, to thank all of you who attended this webinar. I hope you found it useful, and we hope to see you in the Smurfit School one of these days. So thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you. Best of luck, everyone.
Thank you all.
Cheerio.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.